That's what you'll see inside. You'll see it in the shackles of an enslaved child and in the hope of Harriet Tubman's gospel hymnal. We think people with moderate hearing loss should be able to buy a hearing aid over the counter as easily as you can buy reading glasses at your local pharmacy.
I would just say we have seen in the over-the-counter and exchange-traded markets that we have to make sure that there are disciplined regulatory reforms, that we understand the disclosure requirements, that it's globally coordinated.
Meanwhile, instead of serving as a tool to counter terrorism, Guantanamo became a symbol that helped al-Qaeda recruit terrorists to its cause. And out of this blizzard of charges and countercharges, confusion has reigned. Going forward, my administration will continue to consult closely with Congress and with our allies as we deploy this system, and we will rigorously evaluate both the threat posed by ballistic missiles and the technology that we are developing to counter it. We have listened to every charge and every countercharge, from the crazy claims about death panels to misleading warnings about a government takeover of our health care system. But what? I think it's important to understand that the closer we get, the harder the opposition will fight, and the more we'll hear from those whose interests or ideology run counter to the much-needed action that we're engaged in. You know, King understood that the desegregation of the armed forces didn't end the civil rights movement because black and white soldiers still couldn't sit together at the same lunch counter when they came home. But that's when Sal and his men counterattacked again.
Just as we must continually work to ensure that inertia and bureaucratic sclerosis do not impair the legitimate flow of people, goods, and services across our border, so too we must up our game to counter those seeking new ways to harm us.
Private First Class Kaho Ohanohanu's heroic stand so inspired his comrades that they launched a counterattack that completely repulsed the enemy.
I believe the law runs counter to the Constitution, and it's time for it to end once and for all. Go. And today, I talked about this at the State of the Union. We are doing it today. I am creating a trade enforcement unit that will bring the full resources of the federal government to bear on investigations, and we're going to counter any unfair trading practices around the world, including by countries like China. But it is also counter to the national security interests of the United States. And so what we are doing is setting up a trade enforcement unit to aggressively investigate and counter unfair trade practices all around the world, including countries like China. Within this framework, we'll work with the Afghans to determine what support they need to accomplish two narrow security missions beyond 2014: counterterrorism and continued training. So the current ruling is actually, you phrased it as prohibiting. I think you could phrase it as they're now allowing these contraceptives to be sold over the counter for 15-year-olds and older. We cooperate on a wide range of security issues, including our counter-narcotics efforts.
As a civil society member of the OGP Steering Committee, I will work with my colleagues to take up the challenge of identifying concrete ways in which we can counter closing spaces for civil society as well as for opening them. I propose